The other day, I did a video talking about Joe Rogan and his defense of Dylan Mulvaney and Bud Light and dismissing the very legitimate claims from people who are not happy that this corporation is choosing to embrace and endorse the cult ideology that seeks to sexualize and mutilate children. You see, this is a very serious issue to a lot of people. And the whole thing about this so called boycott, the beauty of it is that, unlike the left, it's not calling for people to get violent. It's not calling for people to do anything outside of what they would already normally do. Just, hey, when you're at the store, instead of buying Bud Light or Anheuser-Busch products, just pick a different beer. And here's the thing. I know that people talk about, well, Coors has done a pride campaign. Granted, it's not optimal. But most of these corporations have adopted generic trans marketing. But the thing about Dylan Mulvaney, the reason why it gets so much more egregious is because Dylan Mulvaney, their audience is young kids. And so they in themselves are an abomination, are something that is wrong, because what they're doing is they're selling this idea on transgenderism to young kids, which is just gross. Because you have kids that are confused, kids that are in need of answers, and so they look at these influencers, they look at these people online, and they're selling them on a lie. They're selling them on bullshit, and it's really, truly, genuinely disgusting. Dylan Mulvaney, for attention, is willing to promote something that will actually harm young people who are confused. That's the main issue here. You have a very real opposition to transgenderism, but it's the combination of things that make this issue so important. Joe Rogan dismissed all of that, and in my video, which, by the way, I was one of the first to cover it. I know I don't have a huge channel, but I did my video before Timcast and before anyone else, and you know what, honestly? Not many people have taken this up, and I think the reason is because people are afraid of Joe Rogan. They just know his influence, they know his reach, and they're afraid that he's going to, point at them and make fun of them. But honestly, for me, I don't care. The truth is the truth, and what's right is right. Well, eventually Tim Pool did a video on this. He responded, and I think he did a pretty good job of calling out Joe for the fact that he's just absolutely wrong. So, we're going to watch a little bit of that, and I'm going to give my commentary, because I think this is an important issue, and I think it deserves to be talked about.
I'm just going to come out and say it. I think we're winning this one. The Anheuser-Busch fiasco is only getting worse, and as of right now, I believe, what is their market cap drop off? We'll throw it over to DC Drano, who says, as of 4/12, their loss is $6.65 billion in company value. The bleeding hasn't stopped. On the contrary, it's only getting worse. And boy, my friends, do we have some updates. Because let me just throw it to our good friends over at CNN, who produced this masterpiece.
God, CNN
Bud
is the
Light's
worst.
inclusive ad campaigns are good for business, experts say. Experts, huh? Oh, boy. Oh, wow.
God, CNN.
You know, when I saw this,
CNN, look, I'm not going to tell you how to think, but I'll tell you what I see. When I see a headline like this from CNN, I immediately, instinctually believe the opposite. Bud Light's inclusive ad campaigns are good for business, experts say. It's almost inevitably going to be bad for business, and this thing is full of shit. By the way, her name is Wiener. I know Tim is too mature to point this out, but we're talking about a Danielle Wiener. Boner. Look, I gotta have fun somehow. This is CNN. I'm making the best I can. Her name is Wiener. Give me a break. Come on. Her name is Wiener Broner. If I were making fun of her, I'd call her Wiener Boner. Okay? Give me a break here. I'm trying to turn. I'm trying to turn lemons into lemonade.
After looking at their market cap drop off of $6.65 billion, which is like 4 or 5%, that's significant for people who are holding that stock. When I saw all that, and then I saw CNN rush in and say, actually, it's a good thing. Wow.
It's not.
And here's where I want to start, actually. Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan defended Bud Light.
Goddamn Joe.
He called it goofy and silly to boycott, and I think it's because Joe does not know why people are upset.
That's what
the
I
pushback
said.
is about. He thinks it's about inclusivity. That's not what people are. Well, you could argue if it's the cult mentality, people don't like the cult stuff. But the issue isn't that a group of people are simply going to enjoy a beer. The issue is the targeting of children. That's the important point here. So Joe Rogan goes on his show, cracks open a beer, says the whole thing is silly, and so we'll start here. And I want to mention one thing before we do get started. It's called over-target. As I've mentioned in many of these videos, whenever I talk about this, an important context that I must reiterate for those who may not have seen my other videos, who do not understand what's going on with the Bud Light controversy. I have made a ton of videos. I've been very critical of the left on a lot of different issues. Namely, in many of these videos I point out that the sterilization of their children and the abortion of their children will result in the end of their genetic line and the ceasing of their ideology. Hence why they want to target your kids in schools. I have put out numerous tweets saying things like, spay and neuter your children to prevent overpopulation. Not once has anything I've ever said related to that resulted in a hit piece against me. As far as I know. Maybe on the smaller side, but I'm talking about the big outlets. When I say things like, abort your kids and you will cease to exist and the future will be conservative, they say nothing. I say, sterilize your children and yourself. They say nothing. But I talk about one.
Because they agree with
little
it.
Beer boycott. And boy, do they go insane.
Yep.
Tim Pool, stupid boycott, blah, blah, blah. And then CNN chimes in and says, everything's A-okay. There's two things I see here. One, people are probably losing a lot of money. $6.65 billion lost
People are
in
definitely
market cap
losing money.
probably sends alarm bells to a lot of people in finance.
It's not just finance, Tim. Let me tell you something. Bud Light and Budweiser, AnheuserBusch haven't said a word. And I understand, I don't work for AnheuserBusch. I don't have insiders, getting me all the dirty little juicy details. But whether this was intentional or whether it was unintentional and it was a rogue employee, I can guarantee you that you would not want to be in those boardrooms. I promise you it is not pleasant. They're not sitting there, knocking back drinks and, laughing about how they got one up on the conservatives. No. No, I can promise you, based on what I know about business and based on what I know about corporations, they are not happy because, you lose $6.65 billion in market share. You lose that in the course of a couple days. That is massive. But it's not just the loss of the money, because that's the whole thing about weathering the storm. If you start doing bad, you can batten down the hatches. There are things you can do. But when you have people like Chris Rock, there's a Kid Rock, coming out and saying, I'm never hosting your beer again. And you have other country stars that are coming out and doing it. You have stores and bars saying, we're not having your beer. You have videos that are being made saying, hey, we're not buying your beer. We're going to Coors. We're going to something else. That is disastrous. And by the way, if you work in another company at an executive level like Coors, do not, I promise you on this, do not do anything that has to do with the rainbow flag or woke marketing for a while. You got to let it cool off. If you're thinking June 1st, you're going to start tweeting about pride. I think that you may be in for an unexpected similar situation where people are looking for alternative beers. So, my advice would be this year, stay out of it. This isn't the easy win that it is most years. People are not going to be happy. So, just my advice. But as it relates to the boardroom of Anheuser-Busch, I can promise you they're not happy. It's not a pleasant place right now. They're trying desperately to think of something, which is why they haven't really made a statement. Their only statement was, and I corrected the quartering on this when he said that they hadn't made a statement. Their only statement is, we haven't fired our advertising team. And that was a desperate save face maneuver because they're not ready to make a statement yet. Now, they could be thinking, okay, well, we're just going to weather the storm on this. We're not going to do anything. Wouldn't recommend that. That's a bad idea. But it could be that's what they're thinking. My advice, what I would do immediately is come out and basically just apologize. Sincerely, profusely. Say, look, we did not understand fully our customers or this particular situation. We fully condemn this person and what they believe in. Our company stands for values that are in line with what the American people believe, and we will do better in the future when it comes to marketing and advertising our product. If they came out and did that, that would be a good first step. It'd be a good first step. It'd be a good gesture. And I think that what they would see is immediately a lot of the decline would dissipate. But it could be that people are too arrogant, too proud, too invested, whatever. So it seems like they're going to continue to just wait it out.
Also, rumors about put options being put in place. And that means people are starting to bet against Anheuser-Busch's stock. I don't know if that's true.
Smart.
I don't know how long this can persist, but I will absolutely enjoy going after Anheuser-Busch and making sure we persist in our conversation around why you should not buy Bud Light. Here's a simple version. And then we'll talk about Joe Rogan. There's also another controversy, I guess. Nike also sponsored Dylan Mulvaney, and now there's the Burn Bra Challenge. Now, Nike stock's doing well, and I'll tell you what this is all about. You go after a man's beer, and you're gonna get some controversy. Jesse Kelly on Timcast IRL.
Yeah, the whole thing about Nike is that people don't care. It's like it's a sports bra. But it's like that's, a sports bra is not something, well, I mean, I don't know. I can see why beer would be a much bigger issue.
Last night said that for the first time, his normie neighbors who don't pay attention to anything came over and said, "What's going on with Bud Light? I feel bad buying it." Wow. All of a sudden, regular people who don't care about politics are talking politics. They made a mistake going for beer, especially the number one beer. So let's make a few things clear. The VP of marketing said they did this change. They sponsored Dylan Mulvaney because they need to change their dying brand. But it's not dying. It's the top-selling beer. In fact, just this month, they saw a bump in stock. Let me show you this. Anheuser-Busch stock over the past week.
Yeah, again, I will reiterate, this is why you don't put women in charge. They were literally doing better than ever. I mean, they were doing really, really well. And this woman comes in and she goes, "Well, we were doing so bad." And it's like, oh my God. It's like, this is why you don't put women in charge. She was in her feelings. She felt a certain way. She's like, "Well, I want to make it more sunshine and sparkles." And it's like, oh my God. It's like your brand was not doing that bad. There are ways that you can increase sales, but my gosh, this was not the way to do it.
Is down 4.46%. Now, as of this morning, They're up 1%. We'll see how that goes through the rest of the day. Many people are pointing out that the Federal Reserve's injection of the Fed's injection of money into the system has resulted in basically every stock going up. But for all we know, based on the current trend, it should continue to decrease, but maybe it won't. Maybe it won't. Here's what matters. Before the controversy, oh boy, was it so good. It was so good. At the end of March, they were jumping up. They were at a point this month where Anheuser-Busch was at 10%. Understand what that means, 10%. That means if you have $100,000 in the bank and you invested in Anheuser-Busch InBev, this month alone, you made $10,000. Uh-oh. Now it's only 6.56%. Oh, geez. And worse still, in the last 5 days, 4.46% down. So yeah, it's having an impact, and that's why CNN is rushing. Let me tell you why this is so important. As I've stated before, and I'll say to anybody who's new to what's going on here, the easiest culture war battle we have ever faced, and air, if somebody wants to market to the LGBTQ community. These are people who drink beer as well, by all means. But Dylan Mulvaney is not that. Dylan Mulvaney's audience are children. They're promoting alcohol to children, and they're promoting...
Johnson, you're fired.
Come on.
Why? It's not you. It's your shirt. But it's Casual Friday. Well, you've taken it too far.
Promoting this narcissistic algorithmic derangement to children. That, for me, is the issue. So Joe Rogan is wrong. And let's read what he said Bush after a personalized can of Bud Light was sent to trans influencer Dylan Mulvaney. The ad partnership led to furious backlash with people destroying cans of Bud Light, including Kid Rock. Full stop. It wasn't just that. It's that Dylan Mulvaney was sponsored by Bud Light, with Bud Light cans as a brand ambassador. Why are you having someone market beer to children? That's my first question, but let's continue. Rogan, known for offering controversial opinions on his podcast and speaking his mind, seemingly quelled the drama surrounding Bud Light by dismissing the issue. On Wednesday's episode of Joe Rogan Experience, Rogan and his guest, comedian Sam Talent, opened up a can of Bud Light each and joked about being allies as they proposed a toast. Here's my take. What they're doing is just spreading the brand to an extra group of people. Why, if something is good, do you give an F who's got it? Rogan then asked if people would react the same way if Antifa got into cheesecake. Would people boycott the Cheesecake Factory? Well, let's talk about this. Joe Rogan's wrong.
Joe Rogan is wrong. What I will say is this. Joe Rogan is very selective about his outrage. And certain things he gets very passionate about. If you question marijuana, he's going to be very, very passionate, very, very upset. Like you're like, oh, I don't believe in marijuana. There are certain things that trigger him. But this one he finds silly. And I don't understand his casual disregard for this issue. I would have imagined that he would have done more research before opening his mouth on this. Because you're like, okay, there's this huge thing. Let me educate myself. Instead, he's like, let me speculate. I think it's because of this, and I don't think that's a very good reason. Well, it's like I said in my original video, why didn't you call Tim Pool? Ask him, hey, what the hell is this about? I'm about to do a podcast talking about it. Can you catch me up? And Tim could have explained it. But what I will say is that the way that he says, asks if people would react the same way if Antifa got into cheesecake, would people boycott the Cheesecake Factory? Here's the problem. It's not just that this particular transgender got into beer. The largest beer company in the world sponsored this person, associated them and their ideology and what they stand for with their brand. Now, Joe, if someone were to be advocating for the sexualizing of little girls, say girls under the age of 18. They're all about sexualizing them. That's their brand. That's what they talk about online. They believe that you should be able to have sex with a 13-year-old, 14-year-old. That, really the age of consent is just a number, and you should be able to do what you want as a guy. If you want to go to a 12-year-old or a 10-year-old, you should be able to do that. Okay? It's something that most normal people look at and they say that is despicable. That is disgusting. We want no part of that. But then, Joe, let's say you said, well, we want to brand to a different demographic. So what we're going to do is we are going to sponsor this pedophile, and we're going to make them a brand ambassador. We are going to make them someone who online represents the Joe Rogan experience. And this person out there promoting this pedophilia is now wearing your merch, is now sponsoring and promoting your podcast. Now, Joe, even you should be able to understand that that would be absolutely disastrous. Even you would be able to understand that people would say, Joe Rogan supports pedophilia? What is going on here? Now, you can say, well, maybe I didn't know that, it was a pedophile. You chose to pick the person you wanted to market with your brand. That's not an accident. It didn't happen by happenstance. You chose to do that. You chose to put a pedophile with the Joe Rogan experience and promote that out there. That is not dissimilar from what we're talking about here, Joe. So if the Cheesecake Factory endorsed terrorists and had the Antifa terrorists wearing a Cheesecake Factory shirt and uploaded videos to their channel talking about how they support Antifa, then yes, I imagine that people would boycott the Cheesecake Factory. What you're attempting to do is say, well, the only reason you're mad is because gays are drinking beer, which is not the case.
That's fine. You talk about a lot of things, so am I. The issue here is, the first issue on the surface. I wonder if Joe Rogan going to Spotify has insulated himself from the reaction of his audience. For me, I noticed this when I saw a major spike in viewership around these videos. I am not hiding that fact. I am, in fact, making that point. I'm sure many leftists will say, Tim's only talking about this because he's getting views. What I saw was interest. People cared about the issue, and that matters. There are a lot of issues I beg people to pay attention to. They don't. And I say, if we focus on this, it's an opportunity. See? Dylan Mulvaney's primary audience is millions of teenagers.
Yep.
I don't think my videos matter all that much. An extra group of people, why do you give an F who's got it? Because we don't want beer spread to children. I mean, first of all, I don't like drinking beer, okay? I think beer is bad for you. You probably shouldn't drink it. So...
Tim, you're such a pretentious tool. It's like I agree with what you're saying, but God damn it, Tim, you make it hard. You know what? Anyone who tells me not to drink a fucking beer, do you know what the first thing I want to do is? I want to drink a fucking beer. I don't care that you don't drink beer, Tim. You say it all the time. Like, oh, I don't drink beer. Don't care. Don't care. You don't drink beer. That's fine. You're too good for beer. Or maybe you just don't drink, period. Maybe you're not that kind. That's perfectly fine, too. But, telling people, oh, I don't think you should drink beer. Fuck off, Tim.
That's just my view. But I understand people love beer. Beer is like a human thing.
Yeah.
Beer brings people together.
Yes, it does.
I totally respect it. By all
Yeah.
means, have a beer. Just don't drive. We're not talking about an...
What the fuck? Just don't... Goddamn, Tim. You're such a goddamn nerd. No, but that is correct. Do not drink and drive. Most people, thankfully, don't drink and drive. But, if you are drinking, do the right thing and give up your keys.
Extra group of people, Joe. We're talking about kids. We're talking about 15-year-olds. We do not need someone promoting drinking booze to 15-year-olds. We just don't need that. Simply put, it's weird that I have to say that. I think the drinking age should be 18. Don't get me wrong. There are these stories about teenagers in college who get alcohol poisoning and then it's like Anheuser-Busch, but I mean, where is he going to go now? You going to go to Coors Light? Don't they support LGBTQ? You see, look, man, Joe doesn't understand this. That's what I think. You know, I texted him and I was like, it's just about kids. It is about not promoting these things to chill.
Oh, so Tim texted him, but apparently Joe didn't text back because I don't know. But yeah, good on you, Tim.
Children. Women.
Oh, God, no.
Hi, I'm John Belay, the CEO of Grace. Today,
The issue, sure. Back against social media algorithmic manipulation and the crisis being generated by these platforms promoting what is effectively Elsagate incarnate. This is a major culture war battle. And I think we absolutely do need to stand up now. We have some new details yesterday that came from the Daily Wire that I think matter. New details emerge over a mistake that led to Bud Light's paid marketing engagement with trans influencer. You see, apparently, senior management didn't even know it was happening. Apparently, here's what's happened. Dylan Mulvaney was sent a promo pack. A lot of people get sent these things. They probably just wanted Dylan Mulvaney to drink the beer. But Dylan Mulvaney is a malignant, narcissistic sociopath. And so apparently the story is a bunch of influencers get sent this little box with commemorative cans. Bud Light was not intending to put Dylan Mulvaney on a billboard, but Dylan Mulvaney is. Dylan Mulvaney is such a deranged psychopath that they made themselves the prominent face of Bud Light. And Bud Light did not think that was going to happen. You reap what you sow, Bud Light. So Daily Wire goes on to explain the start of the controversy. Excuse me. They say, blah, 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 blah. The Daily Wire spoke with two sources close to the situation who also claimed the decision to have Mulvaney be part of advertising campaign was not approved. Not one at a senior level was aware this was happening, said one source who was granted anonymity. Some low-level marketing staffer who helps manage the hundreds of influencer engagements they do must have thought it was no big deal. Obviously, it was. And it's a shame because they have a well-earned reputation for just being America's beer, not a political company. It was a mistake. A second source claimed that a lower-level employee had made the decision to include Mulvaney in the campaign.
Oh, that's
a
terrible.
move that appears to have cost the company $5 billion, now $6.65 billion in market value. The backlash to the iconic American beer brand was so intense that Budweiser distributor in Missouri canceled an event with the company's famous Clydesdale horses because everything was still sensitive. Now, here's what I think here. I think they may be lying. They don't want to issue an apology. Well, do not buy Anheuser-Busch until they do. Here's what I think. I think they're reeling from this. I think they made a bad choice. I think people are deeply offended by this. Anheuser-Busch's vice president of communications locked her Twitter account in recent days. So what do? PR 101, ignore the problem. But that's not working. So let's move on to PR 102. A couple of anonymous individuals working with the company will try to say it was a mistake. Feign ignorance. We had no idea this was going to happen. Oh, jeez. It's not enough. Apologize.
Yep.
I'll tell you this. I don't drink beer. But if Anheuser-Busch apologizes and says, we did not intend to sponsor someone so divisive as Dylan Mulvaney, if they come out publicly as a corporation and say, we understand the hurt we've caused to all of you and we apologize, Dylan Mulvaney should not receive any kind of funding or support from us.
So, yeah, I agree with that 100%. But here's the stipulation, and I think that Tim implies this, but he doesn't actually say it. It has got to be sincere. If the company comes out and says, well, we apologize that that your feelings were hurt, and, we apologize that you reacted badly to this, or, we apologize that, you didn't understand our greater message of inclusivity, or, if they come out and give an insincere apology, then no. But if they come out and say essentially what he said, I think it would go a long way to repairing the damage.
If they do that, the first thing I will do is I will buy out an entire liquor store's supply of AnheuserBusch.
Well, that's a deal.
I will then make a video of all of us sitting around cracking beers and being like, you know what? We've decided to become drinkers. We're not big on alcohol, but now we're going to be. Because I want to stress that if this company does the right thing and apologizes to all of us that they've offended, that we will then return as customers and say, thank you all so much. The path to success comes in apologizing. And I got this tweet from Cenk Uygur that I want to point out.
Tim, you could buy the beer. You don't have to drink it. Like, if you want to show your support, but you're not a beer drinker, fine. Buy the beer cans. If there's somebody around the compound that likes to drink it, fine. But if you can't, you can pour it out. Use the Bud Light cans to build something cool. Build the giant chicken. Bring in an artist to make a giant chicken out of Bud Light cans, and you can see the Bud Light logo all over it. It would be your centerpiece, and I don't know, that would be pretty cool. A giant Bud Light chicken that you make out of the beer cans that you buy to support them apologizing. I think that would be pretty damn cool, Tim.
I don't have it pulled up right now. I was going to talk about it later. But he mentions that the right will welcome anyone who agrees with even 5% of their platform, whereas the left will shun anyone who disagrees with as little as 0.5. The point is, he was saying, you could come out and be like, you could say you're a leftist, you're pro-universal health care, you hate Donald Trump, you all of these things. You're for the war in Ukraine, but actually you think that Joe Biden is super corrupt and Hunter Biden is a criminal, and the right will be like, dude, really do appreciate it. Why don't you come hang out and have a conversation? If you're on the left and you say, I agree with you on all of these things, but I do think Hunter Biden's a crook, they will kick you out.
Yep.
This is my point. I want it to be known, Bud Light, that you are about to face the most amazing opportunity of your storied American brand career, and that is, by coming out and apologizing, not only will you recover from this,
Mm-hmm.
you will earn many new customers.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great opportunity. In fact, I would argue this. A tremendous opportunity for any brand would be to come out in support of someone as divisive and off-putting as Dylan Mulvaney, and then a week later go, whoa, we had no idea. I apologize. You know why? Because then we're going to buy your product. Then you will win us over. One thing I think people need to consider, I don't know if I have the story pulled up, is that, maybe I have it over here actually. Is this it? Yep.
Today I have some bad news and good news for you. And I'll start with the bad news first because you deserve to know this sad fact. Most survival companies don't want you to see this page.
Here we go. Stonewall Inn bans Anheuser-Busch beer for Pride weekend to protest anti-LGBTQ donations. Let's go back to 2021. Anheuser-Busch was targeted by LGBTQ groups. A couple years later, Anheuser-Busch was still the top-selling beer. Their stock jumped 10% in 1 month, and everything was going great. You see, Anheuser-Busch ignored this, and they did fine. But I want to make sure this is clear, too, as we begin to wrap this up, so that everybody can understand, especially individuals like Joe Rogan. The issue here is this. It's not about someone being gay, LGBT, or trans. Dylan Mulvaney is evil. And let me explain. I don't say that in any kind of religious context. I say Dylan Mulvaney is the banality of evil. You look at the videos of Dylan desperately trying to be famous, and you see this person's only intent is to do whatever it takes to be famous. TikTok has an algorithm that promotes certain content. Dylan Mulvaney tried to be famous by doing animal content, by doing nature content, and none of it worked. As soon as Dylan Mulvaney jumped on the trans bandwagon, all of a sudden they were getting millions of views. Interesting. Dylan doesn't care about any of this stuff. Dylan wants power. It is narcissistic sociopathy. This should not be supported by any corporation or any of us. Joe is not that guy. Joe's a genuine dude who believes what he believes and is talented and funny. That works for him. Dylan Mulvaney is a vapid narcissist with no talent. And the funny thing is there are people who have said stuff like, I can't remember who it was, I came on the show, and they were like, oh, Dylan Mulvaney's got some talent there. And I'm like, no, Dylan Mulvaney doesn't. That's why Dylan Mulvaney could not get famous until they targeted the algorithm in the most perfect way. That's the reality of it. I don't care if trans people drink beer. I don't care if trans people exist. I wish them all the best. I want them happiness. I want them peace, love, and freedom. And that no beef. I don't care. I don't care if Bud Light came out and went to any trans person and said, here's a beer. You're sponsored.
Well, we get to fence sitter Tim. Yeah, I do have an issue with the trans community because the trans community are bullies. They are mentally ill, vicious idiots that go after people in the most inhumane ways. And you see the result of that through Silvervale, Pikami, other VTubers. People are afraid to talk about this issue, but the trans community is absolutely vicious. And they are cruel, and they are mean-spirited, and they are nasty, and they're rude and vulgar. And there's nothing at all about them that makes me think, oh, well, these people are just, they're so demure and, just they're so great. But if only people would, affirm them and accept them, then all of a sudden everything would be okay. No, these people are genuinely terrible. They are the worst human beings that I have ever seen. As evidenced by just about every interaction you see with a transgender person in a group. Not the individual, in a group. So when Dave Chappelle was talking about his friend Daphne, do you remember that? It was tragic. He talked about his friend Daphne, the individual, transgender, awesome person. Talked about all the different characteristics that he remembered. When Dave Chappelle was coming under fire, his friend Daphne defended him. And what happened? The transgender community bullied that person to the point where they took their own life. There is nothing acceptable or redeemable or even good about the trans community. They are evil. That is not the same as transgender people being evil, because there are trans individuals like Blair White that obviously prove that that's not true. But if you look at the left-wing online trans community, if you look at the people that support Dylan Mulvaney, Tim is right. These people are genuinely evil. And you need look no further than those that wanted to play Hogwarts Legacy. The way that those people were treated was absolutely ridiculous. So, yeah, it's a major issue. Glad Tim did a video on this. We've gone on for quite a bit of time. I think I'm going to end it there. But I will finish off with my sales pitch to you. We're at 21 followers. We're building something here. We're building a rocket ship to the moon. And every follower gets me one step closer to world domination. No, it does genuinely help. It costs nothing. Rumble.com/C/fan advocacy network. Come and join. We're building something. I'd love for you to be part of it. Thanks for watching, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll see you next time.